Hello, everyone. This is Cody Lee of BlackCatBooks.org, author of I, the Dragon, Cruel and Beautiful, Rabbit Hole, and King Dia. And recently, I've been playing a lot of The Great Ace Attorney on Nintendo Switch, the newest entry in the Ace Attorney franchise, actually a prequel set about 100 years before the events of the first game. You know, samurai lawyers traveling to England and meeting Sherlock Holmes. This is my shit, okay? Like, this is one of those examples of a game that, like, I feel like was made for me specifically. Cause like, I'm kind of playing through this game. I'm kind of thinking about the cases and the mystery and the characters. And there are moments where I'm like, yeah, maybe the pacing could be better. Maybe the mysteries could be better thought out. Maybe the trial sections aren't as good as they used to be. But, like, I'm having so much fun with it, I really don't care. And a major reason for that, I think, is how much this pulls from the Holmes mythos, the legend that is Sherlock Holmes. Now I think I don't really talk about Holmes very much on this channel. In fact, it's been like so long since I last read Holmes that I haven't thought about it at all in recent years. But I am a big fan of the character. I am a big fan of, like, a lot of the classic stories. And seeing this again, seeing this has really, like, rekindled my love for the character and Arthur Conan Doyle's work. Right? Like, I just love what they're doing with this, and I thought I would give a little bit of my perspective when it comes in regards to this, because I'm not sure if, like, Ace Attorney fans are actively, like, talking about this kind of stuff, talking about, like, how much this series, this game is actually pulling from Sherlock Holmes lore. Of course, you have, like, Sherlock himself. You have Wilson, who's meant to be, like, a stand-in for Watson. That is one of the things I'm noticing. Like, are people aware that, like, the stand-in names are just retarded, like, adjusted versions of their actual names? Like Wilson, was I the only one who immediately saw that? I was like, oh yeah, that's supposed to be Watson. Like, I think I read a press release about that years and years ago, but I was not aware of that going into it. Like, I didn't know that for sure. But then, like, Watson, Dr. Watson himself is the victim in the first case in this game, and you learn that, like, he's a professor of medicine at this university. He was invited by some random Ace Attorney character, some random guy, and you get involved with him and stuff like that, and you get involved with his murder, and you sort of get that's how the game sets up, like, with the murder of Dr. Watson, which again is a very interesting take for the story to go in. I really like that about the game. I really like the creativity it brings to the Holmes universe, because, like, I think with a lot of adaptions, like, a lot of them, like, tend to stay within a safe zone, if you will. Like, they tend to, like, rely on, like, those kinds of cliches that everyone knows about Holmes. Everyone knows about the character. Like, they always focus on, like, Irene Adler in particular, the character from the Scarlet Letter, I believe, who's, like, always portrayed as, like, one of the major characters in whatever story, when she really only ever appeared once. Like, a very notable character, to be sure, one that's had a lasting legacy, but only the one appearance. They always have, like, a specific relationship between Holmes and Watson. They always have, like, a specific, like, they do very specific things to, like, make the audience, like, this is Sherlock Holmes. With the Great Ace Attorney, I feel like they're doing it a little bit differently this time. They're sort of bringing the sort of real world situation of Holmes into it, where the characters, or at least the character of Susato, who I believe is supposed to be Maya Fey's ancestor, adorable girl, by the way. The character Susato is actually a big fan of the adventures of Sherlock Holmes, so she's actually well aware of Holmes's reputation before the characters actually meet him, because she reads the stories that are apparently in the Greatest Attorney, written by Dr. Watson himself, as opposed to Arthur Conan Doyle, like they were in real life. But, like, the stories are different from, like, the reality of the character, in which the stories seem to portray Holmes as if he's, like, always spot on about everything all the time. But in reality, I haven't played enough to really figure out what the deal with Holmes is yet. But in reality, Holmes is like kind of scatterbrained and kind of all over the place. Insanely observant guy, someone who can like pick up on the general concept of what's wrong with the situation, having like that kind of mental acuity, like that able to pick up on stuff, but like for some bizarre reason he always comes to like a radically incorrect conclusion, and he needs someone there to sort of like set him straight and sort of tard wrangle him a little bit. Like it really does feel like tard wrangling in a lot of ways. So Naruhodo, the protagonist, Ryunosuke, Phoenix's ancestor, who is actually a really surprisingly... I was fond of this guy from the beginning. He comes off like a more competent attorney than Phoenix with absolutely no training, which is hilarious. Ryunosuke, really fond of the character already. I like the original cast in general, actually. One of the things I like about this as an Ace Attorney fan is just how different everything feels. It feels like it's really like changing the formula up a lot, and I really appreciate that. Like Ace Attorney 6 felt kind of samey. What was I getting at? Yeah. So Ryunosuke has to sort of play the Watson role and sort of like rein in Holmes and his autism. And the thing I really appreciate about that, a lot of people don't realize, like one of the cliches I mentioned earlier is that like one of the things that a lot of people do, a lot of parodies in particular, I've seen Animaniacs do this, they sort of portray like Watson as if he's like a dumbass, like a complete dumbass who has no idea what's going on. Like he's a comic relief character that exists to make Holmes look better. Like he's like the Watson, he's like the Yamcha of British investigators. But no, like Watson is a very intelligent man, right? He has his own medical practice. He's a trained doctor. He's always been like a very good beneficiary to Holmes. Like they were living together for a long time. Like Watson is like an observer to Holmes' like brilliance, but like that's kind of what makes the Holmes character work, is that like Watson is clearly a well-educated, well-defined man, a respectable person in his own field, but he can't match Holmes in his specific niche, which is like investigative work, right? Like that's kind of the thing. That's kind of like how Sherlock was defined, like very early on, where he was like super specialized in this one particular thing, like solving mysteries, right? Like early on, like this is one of those things that become kind of iffy as the stories go on, but like very, very early on, like Holmes was described as like having no real knowledge of like history or philosophy or like astronomy or like a lot of like sciences that couldn't really be applied to like scientific investigative work, but like that kind of changed when it goes on. This seems to be like based off that concept, right? That initial concept where like Holmes is like very, very good at like very specific things, but kind of terrible at others. Like for example, like suggesting that reptiles can like drink milk. Like that comes up at some point. He comes to like these ludicrous solutions to some things, and it's like your responsibility to sort of tard wrangle him and sort of show him like what's up. And the thing I really appreciate about this is that like it presents Sherlock as a flawed character, but it doesn't like diminish him ever either, because like it feels like a better version of what they did with Professor Layton in the Professor Layton crossover. If you'll remember that, like in Professor Layton versus Ace Attorney, like Professor Layton basically had like the entire mystery figured out like by the halfway point or something, and like by the final trial you're basically just like dicking around for no reason, because Professor Layton is a douchebag who's so fucking smart. He's just figured out the entire thing. Like Professor Layton is a Mary Sue. Essentially, who has everything figured out for the most asinine of reasons. The real deal, though, the OG Sherlock Holmes, however, like, he actually kind of he makes mistakes. He makes weird judgments sometimes, and he figures things out eventually, but it takes like a real sense. There's a real sense of progression to get there, right? Like a real logical set of steps to really keep going and really go down this, to really solve the mystery, right? And in a lot of ways, I feel as if the Sherlock character is better handled, I think, than a lot of other adaptations. I want to finish the game, the series, before I really give my thoughts on this as a whole, and I might actually go back and reread a lot of the classic ones. I think I will, actually, because like this game takes a lot of influences. I can tell from a lot of classic Sherlock stories. Like I'm in the middle of a case right now called like the Speckled Band, which of course is like a pretty famous Holmes story about the snake and like the. Yeah, they take these elements from classic Holmes stories and kind of incorporate them in fun, unique, different ways than you might expect. It's kind of surprising. I think it's pretty clear that like Holmes fans did write this, and it kind of makes me wish that like they straight up just made a Holmes game or made a Holmes anime. Like just adapt it, but just adapt that shit to animation. Has it ever been done yet? Has anybody produced a good Sherlock Holmes anime? I would be all over that shit. But Holmes. I really appreciate the callbacks to some of these famous stories, because I think a lot of them are kind of, I don't want to call them obscure because like Holmes fans know them pretty well. These are all like the really famous ones, like Hound of the Baskervilles. I saw a reference to that. The menu screens, you can see like all the chapters like from the get go. I looked through them all, and they're all pretty well known ones. The Speckled Band is the one I'm on now. There's a Hound of the Baskervilles one. I'm really curious to see like how they utilize these classic stories. Actually, I don't think I've ever read Hound of the Baskervilles, so I really need to get around to that. I really need to get around to finishing some reading up on my getting up to date on Sherlock, because again, I haven't reread this stuff in years. I want to say like at least a decade. No, probably about a decade. Yeah, I remember where I was when I was last reading my complete collection of Sherlock Holmes. Do I still have it, or did I lose it when I moved? Ah, fuck. Well, anyway. I love Sherlock Holmes. I love the character. I love what they're doing with the Great Ace Attorney. I'm very happy with it so far, and I cannot wait to see where the story goes from here.